The smile disappeared from Prime Minister Okazaki's face, and his expression hardened. Everyone knows that I have a lot of money. Still, I can guess why you're making this suggestion. The more people have, the more they want. How many people sold their country because it was difficult to make a living? Prime Minister Okazaki did not get angry or shout. Instead, he said as a warning, "I want you to be careful with your words. I'm sorry if I was offended by the fact that I had a lot of money. But what if it's true? I was only talking about the cooperation and development of Japan-Korea relations, and I was only asking for help from OTK company for this." I nodded. "I see. Listening to what you said, I think I misunderstood a bit. I think I've heard that Meikuk starts with the little things. It is not difficult to give a little consideration to Japan's situation in the claims agreement. If you can enter the Japanese market with the support of the Japanese government in return, it is a business that has enough leftovers. But is this really the end? Once you accept the offer, the demands will increase from then on. Since you have already started investing, it will not be easy even if you want to step out. And when you wake up one day, you will be working hard for the good of Japan. There may be some who have betrayed the country and the people with their best efforts, but most of the pro-Japanese groups must have passed over to Japan in this way." Prime Minister Okazaki looked at me and said, "We are talking about Japan's past history, but North Korea is committing more serious human rights violations and engaging in various provocations. Why do you ask for an apology only from Japan, while not asking for anything from North Korea? That makes sense. Currently, Seo Yun Nakyung is making the same argument and is putting pressure on the government to re-establish Korea-Japan relations. Moreover, while Japan's crimes are over, North Korea's atrocities continue to this day. It may be an individual's point of view, but from the national point of view, whether North Korea is good or bad, Japan is good or bad, it doesn't matter. What matters is what is in the national interest. To do this, you can either go to China or make friends." I thought soberly. The dichotomous thinking that pro-work is bad and anti-work is good doesn't help. Justice without power is not justice. In the case of individuals and between companies and corporations, one might lean on the law, but in a state-to-state case, only the logic of power works. If South Korea had no power, would Japan have lifted export sanctions and paid compensation for forced labor? Did the Japanese Prime Minister urgently visit South Korea and ask for a summit? Although Korea-Japan relations have not yet turned around, it is a situation worth seeing. Salta after death. Now that I'm alive, it's time to kill my opponent. The people of North Korea are outraged by the crimes against humanity committed by Japan in the past. This is also true of other neighboring countries. OTK company plans to support private organizations to investigate Japanese war crimes in Korea, China, Russia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore, while supporting the lawsuits of victims in each country. Anger appeared on Prime Minister Okazaki's face. "Are you going to use your anti-Japanese sentiment for this work?" Anti-Japanese is definitely helpful in this inter-Russian economic cooperation. So North Korea is also beating Japan with excitement. I asked him, "Isn't that right? Hasn't the Prime Minister been using the anti-Korean sentiments well in politics? If you're bored, claim sovereignty over Dokdo and visit Yasukuni Shrine." Taeyong nodded again. "Right. I couldn't even speak to Russia about the 4 northern provinces that were actually Japanese territory. This is probably because Russia is scary and Korea is easygoing. Now you should know that it isn't. As you may know, gas pipelines and railroads are just the beginning. Combined with the current industrial change, this will lead to the development of Asia as a whole. There is more to be done in the future. ASEAN and Central Asian countries see this as an opportunity and are preparing to jump in. In the past, the leader of Asia was Japan. There was a time when economic development was impossible without Japanese funds. But now that's not necessarily the case. Korea and Russia can provide funding, and there is also the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, ALB, established by China. Of course, the more capital the better, so if Japan invests, there is no reason to stop it. I just cut it and said, Japan must apologize and pay reparations. Without a genuine apology, Japan will not have a place in the Asian economic bloc in the future. Although Japan is geographically located in Asia, it has always been considered a member of Europe since the Meiji Restoration. But now even European countries are making efforts to enter the Asian market. This is because the market is large and has high growth potential. I saw Prime Minister Okazaki. It wasn't shown directly on his face, but I could guess what he was feeling. You are probably experiencing humiliation and anger that you have never experienced before. After all, where did the Prime Minister of Japan go to be treated like this? Still, because I'm like me, I treat you like this. Prime Minister Okazaki said in a calm voice. Do you really think it is possible to exclude Japan? I nodded. If you watch it, you will know. You also said something. I recommend the derailment entrance. Team leader Jang Ki-hong took off his tie and took a breath. Then he asked me carefully. Is this okay? But the opponent is Japan. Because the opponent is Japan. Japan is a country with strengths in all industries. They will want to somehow fit into the newly formed economic bloc. If Korea excludes Japan, it will reach out to other countries to find a breakthrough, but it won't be easy as long as I'm there. China and Russia are already exploring North Korea's special economic zones. The later it is, the more attributable to Japan. As Yeji pointed out, Japan should pay $70 billion to North Korea anyway. What is important is the method of compensation. When it comes to compensation of 100 million won, is it profit to give in cash or to give in kind from the giver's point of view? Of course, the latter is beneficial. If you transfer 100 million in cash to your bank account, you have to run a factory, hire employees, and pay a salary to give 100 million worth of materials or machines. It can have the effect of revitalizing the domestic economy, and through this, it is possible to enter the market. As I looked out the window, I saw a series of black cars leaving. It is Prime Minister Okazaki's belief that he will create a new Japan out of the post-war order. To this end, he has consistently denied the history of the past and has taken a hard line with neighboring countries. No matter what happens, he will not break his convictions. However, when Japan is isolated and economic growth slows, the government's approval rating is bound to decline. Negotiation is impossible as long as Prime Minister Okazaki is there anyway. The conclusion of the North Korea-Japan Claims Agreement will only be possible after a change of government. I don't know if there will be any room left for Japan at that time. The Korea-Japan summit was held for 3 days. The two leaders reaffirmed that Korea and Japan are economic partners and agreed to further increase exchanges. However, on the issue of past history, they were still unable to narrow their differences of opinion and ran parallel to each other. Russia's development of Siberia in connection with railway construction has raised expectations from neighboring landlocked countries. Electricity is the most basic of industrial development. Russia has signed TWR export contracts to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Mongolia. Nuclear power plants are not easy to construct in landlocked countries due to their characteristics that require a large amount of cooling water. However, TWRs do not require cooling water and have the advantage that they can be built in a small size in a necessary area. Diplomats from different countries exchanged various stories under the water, and the changes in the topography of Northeast Asia seemed to be visible. South Korea, China, and Russia have decided to expand the existing bilateral and multilateral free trade agreements to conclude a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. The first meeting was decided to take place in Beijing. China has invited almost every country in Asia. This included India, Australia, and New Zealand. However, Japan was excluded from the list. Prime Minister Okazaki tried to ignore Japan, saying that it would not have much impact as it is a member of the TPP anyway, but even within the LDP, voices of concern about Japan's isolation have erupted. Domestic progressive and conservative groups still protested for and against in front of Gwangwaman and OTK Company, and the ruling and opposition parties fought each other at the National Assembly because they were pro-North Korean and pro-Japanese. The South Korean and Russian due diligence teams finished checking the condition of the North Korean railroad and discussed the construction plan. We plan to proceed as quickly as possible so that North Korea cannot step out. The date for the reunion of separated families was decided in mid-December, and the location was decided at MT Yonsong Jumgang hastily started remodeling the facilities that will be used as reunions. Vehicles loaded with construction materials moved to North Korea in a line, and North Korea-themed stocks such as Yonsong Jumgang and Yonsong RT soared, driving the stock market up. The two Koreas agreed to hold a summit in Pyongyang. North Korea invited foreign media to Pyongyang. President Ha Chong-min was brimming with enthusiasm, and he personally met with Na Kyung-yeon and lawmakers from the Liberty Korea Party to persuade them and asked for the passage of a special law in the National Assembly. If it is Prime Minister Okazaki's wish for Japan to become a normal nation, economic cooperation between the two Koreas and peaceful unification are his wishes. I don't know what will happen later, but for now I took the most difficult step. The day before President Ha Chong-min departed for Pyongyang, he contacted me and said, "I owe a great debt to the CEO for this work. I will make sure to pay off this debt someday. Even if direct investment in North Korea is prohibited, it does not mean that there is no way to invest. Financial capital has been working hard to find and invest in companies that will benefit from this incident. On the other hand, many companies came to them to invest in them. Senior Sanjiop worked hard to meet business people. As I was about to leave work, Ellie came to my office. 'Where have you been?' she said. 'I came here to eat with my mother.' Read more at wuxiax.com. Was that today? Did you say that?" Ellie said with a twisted expression. "Jinhoo has been busy every day. Did you? It seems that I am constantly working even when I think of myself. I'm worried that I'll never be able to rest until I really retire. Come to think of it, I haven't been able to date much lately. It's late, but would you like to go on a date?" Ellie pouted her lips. "Shit. I have to tell you, but are you asking me out on a date?" "Sorry." I took Ellie's hand and left. It was late, but Gangnam Street became a nightmare. Since I haven't had dinner yet, I first got in the car and headed to the 24-hour hamburger shop in Apgujeong. The appearance of the store is like a typical American family restaurant. It was late, so there weren't many customers. Upon entering, the staff and guests were amazed. "Ugh. Maybe Kang Jin-hoo." "Yes. That's me. Are you ordering now?" "No, of course." We placed our order and sat down. While eating a hamburger, Ellie drank carbonated water and stared at me. "What's wrong?" "I think Jinhoo is really great." "What?" "It's just like this one." I laughed bitterly. If it wasn't for me, someone else would have done it. But if it wasn't for Jinhoo, no one would have been able to do it. Isn't this how he gets another Nobel Peace Prize? I hope. Well, if you give it to me, I won't refuse. As Japan passing became a reality in Asia, the concerns of Japanese companies grew. Although there was no immediate damage, it was a serious problem that Japan was excluded from the free trade bloc led by Korea, China, and Russia. In addition, Japan's colonial rule and war crimes emerged as international issues, and negative public opinion against Japan arose in ASEAN. China has quietly fanned this and tried to use it as an opportunity to increase the influence of its own companies. In Japan, a boycott of Korean products took place led by right-wing groups, anti-Korean groups, and net right-wing groups. Makoto Sarai, president of the representative anti-Korean group Special Group, raised his voice and shouted, "How long will we be defeated by a country that was once a colony of Japan? There is no need to deal with people who are ungrateful and do not know the grace of annexing and developing a country that was nothing more than a colony of China. Unsubscribe from Faceit, close your Lost Fantasy account, and don't use your OTK battery." Those who don't do that aren't Japanese. In fact, the number of users of Faceit and Lost Fantasy decreased. But it wasn't something to worry about. While the boycott took place in Japan, the image of OTK company in Asia has risen significantly. Faceit and Lost Fantasy have been a sensation in ASEAN. This more than made up for the decline in the Japanese market. Regarding Japan's boycott, Facetio Toby Strong said, "If you don't want to see it, don't look. It's hard for us to put on the mosaic one by one. I don't even know why I have to do this." OTK Games also took the position that it would not respond to the boycott separately as President Ichikawa announced his departure from Japan and moved the headquarters and corporation to Detroit. What was noteworthy was the attitude of the Japanese media. Unlike the last conflict, which did not hesitate to speak out and incite anti-Korean and boycott movements, even the Sankei Shimbun and NHK were cautious. This meant that they were feeling a considerable sense of crisis in the current situation in East Asia. Professor Ichiro Sasahara, professor of economics at the University of Tokyo, wrote the following article to the press. "I don't know what to boycott. Even if it decreases, trade with Japan is always in a surplus, and so is the travel account. This means that Korea buys Japanese products and travels to Japan much more than Japan buys Korean products and travels to Korea. Japan is an isolated and unusual market that is called Galapagos, but Korea is incorporated into the global value chain and plays an important role in the global economy. If we had to trade with only one country between Korea and Japan 3 years ago, all countries would have chosen Japan. But now many countries are more likely to choose Korea. As you can see from the last trade dispute, Japan suffers even if it sanctions exports, and Japan suffers even if it sanctions imports. Aside from moral and political correctness, if it was possible to ignore South Korea's demands in the past, it is no longer possible. Nevertheless, how long will the self-harm of hate and boycott continue? Professor Haman Kim came to the company. "Normally I have thick hair and a chubby beard, but today I combed my hair properly and shaved my beard." He was also neatly dressed in a suit. "You look clean today. I went to the International Battery Forum. I think it was today. Originally, it was an event for battery experts in Korea to gather and exchange opinions. But at some point it became an international event. This year 2 researchers from Japan, China and Europe entered the country in large numbers. It seems that Korea has become the center of the global battery industry. The reason is, of course, thanks to the OTK battery. What I realized anew through this incident is the importance of technology. If it were not for OTK batteries, could the commercialization of electric vehicles be able to proceed so quickly? Could it have won the trade war with Japan? I don't know much because I'm a liberal arts major, but in fact, Professor Haman Kim's achievements were unbelievably great. In general, technology evolves at a similar rate. However, sometimes a genius appears and raises the level of human technology by several steps. OTK battery presented a new type of battery, and other companies also tried to disassemble and analyze it and develop a new battery by circumventing the patent. These efforts were not in vain, however, and prototypes were created in several places. However, there is still a long way to go before it can be used. Still, as we continue to conduct R&D, something will come out in a few years. No matter how good a skill is, if you stand still, you will surely catch up. Therefore, in order to maintain the technological gap, we also need to continue R&D. Professor Haman Kim said while scratching his head. I made some inquiries to the geology professors I met through the introduction of Professor Mohan. What kind of inquiry? I was wondering if there is a possibility that there is a geratinium deposit in North Korea. There are many stories about the underground resources buried in North Korea. In fact, it is said that there is a lot of lignite in Hamgyongdo. The Aoji coal mine is also located here, and there are large deposits of gold, uranium, and rare earths. However, due to the closed nature of North Korea, exactly what minerals are buried and how many are still unknown. When the North-South Railroad is connected, a new infrastructure is formed around the railroad tracks. As North Korea is highly likely to engage in resource development and sales in connection with Siberian development, global resource companies also showed great interest. Looking at the topography, it is highly probable that there are significant amounts of rare earth deposits in North Korea. I heard that too. According to the Korean Research Center's estimate, about 20 to 50 million tons. There are even claims of over 200 million tons. If this is true, it could overtake China to become the world's #1 rare earth producer. But more important than reserves is profitability. Even if a billion-dollar gem is buried, what's the use if it costs $1.1 billion to dig? The same is true of rare earths, which China is using as a strategic resource. In fact, there are several countries with rare earth deposits. However, due to environmental destruction and profitability problems, it is simply not being touched. If China restricts exports or the price soars, it will have no choice but to start mining. The question is, what percentage of those rare earths are germanium? If there is any germanium, wouldn't it be possible to commercialize JN batteries by solving the supply problem? JN battery is a game changer, a technology that will change the world. If OTK batteries ushered in the electric vehicle era, JN batteries will open up a whole new world where everything is wireless. If this happens, wouldn't it be strange if the market cap of OTK company doubled or tripled from now? Professor Ho-min Kim smiled mischievously. Even if I say this, I'm not expecting much. Mineral content is also an issue, and germanium is expensive to isolate pure substances. Rare earth is not the end of the mining furnace, but must go through processes such as separation, refining, and alloying. This requires advanced technology, and the existing rare earth companies are already occupying this market. Even if the rare earth is mined at a low price, if the cost of extracting the pure germanium material is high, it is not easy to secure economic feasibility. I told Professor Ho-min Kim. Definitely an accurate investigation is necessary. However, if high-purity germanium is buried in large quantities in North Korea, all problems will be solved at once. We can make JN battery, and North Korea can secure the capital necessary for economic development without outside help. Thinking like that, Taekyu stared at me. It's as if they are urging them to come and see Yeji. Wouldn't it be nice if it looked like it wanted it? While the economic cooperation between South and North Korea and free trade agreements involving Korea, China, Russia, ASEAN, Central Asia, India, and Australia were in progress, the calendar turned to December. While we were watching TV together in the living room, Ali suddenly said, "Another year is coming to an end." It's a thought that comes to mind every time, but it seems that time goes by faster as the years go by. It feels like it's only been yesterday since we started the new year, but it's already December. Taekyu said in admiration for nothing. A lot of things happened this year. It was really eventful. Toyota stock purchase, TWR investment, trade dispute with Japan, California recovery, Simangium development, Nikola acquisition, inter-Korean economic cooperation, etc. It's hard to believe that so many things have happened in one year. I feel like I'm standing in the middle of world history for some reason. Is it your mood? As the end of the year approached, parties were held here and there, and several invitations were sent to homes and offices a day. As always, the upper classes want to enjoy their own culture. Therefore, exhibitions, concerts, and parties for the upper classes are held separately. You can't attend real upper-class gatherings no matter how much money you pay. Certain honor or social status, or the endorsement or recommendation of existing members is required. Those who have just succeeded and are just starting to build their fortune try to put their energy in step here. There are reasons to want to feel like an upper-class person, but there are also reasons to get bigger opportunities. This is because, from the mouths of the upper class, information that cannot be known through the media or the internet comes and goes. If you can get even a little more accurate information a little faster than others, you can seize a business opportunity just with that. Aren't social gatherings a part of business? Well, we're not going to go and benefit. 10 bodies would not be enough to attend all these events. It is highly likely that we will be a big issue just by attending a party. And where you go and where you don't go, someone will be disappointed. So I'm not going to go all out equally. Invitations to numerous charitable parties and events were also sent in from the United States. It is an event held mainly by famous business people, investors, or Hollywood stars. Some will think that it is a great honor just to receive an invitation. It's a charity party. Unlike Korean companies that are stingy about donations, American companies have an active donation culture. In many cases, companies or entrepreneurs run charitable foundations. It's probably a Puritan country, so it's almost obligatory. Unlike other companies, OTK Company did not make any donations, but no American criticized it. Read more at wuxiax.com. Who would have provided so many relief supplies at the time of Big One? Although the US government paid some, we spent much more. Thanks to this, OTK Company has the right to stay in the US for life. It would not be an exaggeration to say that I got a so-called kabang ticket. However, you should continue to donate. But this is not easy either. Can't we simply donate to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? It is not. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a charitable foundation founded by Bill Gates and his wife Melinda Gates. Warren Boat is also donating large sums of money to this. The founder of Microsoft and the world's richest man, he retired as CEO at the age of 50 when he passed on the role of CEO to Steve Ballmer, and has now turned into the world's largest philanthropist. The amount of donation is unimaginable. We have been donating 5 billion won a day for over 20 years. It's like spending money like water. Taeyong narrowed his eyes. Isn't it difficult to use water that much? That's right. But the ironic thing is that even doing this, the wealth is increasing. This is because Microsoft stock has continued to soar after Satya Shyamalan took over as CEO. Bill Gates has spent half of his life trying to make money, and for the rest of his life he is trying to use his money for good. It is respectable in many ways. Will I be able to do the same later? Taekyu looked at me and asked. But what are we going to do next year? Well, I'll keep making money. Next year, factories under construction in Korea, the United States, and Vietnam will be completed and existing lines will be replaced, and automobile production will double from now. Simanjiam will also be framed as a city to some extent. Ellie asked with a smile. Is that all you have to do next year? I quickly added a word. Of course we have to get married first. A meeting was held in Beijing for a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. Leaders from all over the world entered China one after another. Although the supreme dignity of North Korea did not come in person, he is visiting the construction site and giving instructions to the people. Vice Chairman Ri Hae-ryong attended with the sister of the supreme dignity. President Zhang Pinghua delivered the keynote speech. Now the world is heading in a new direction. Denying the past will no longer be forgiven. The issue of Japan's past history was highlighted, and the meeting room was nothing short of a slander against Japan. The victims gathered to raise their voices about Japan's abolition and rearmament of the peace constitution, and that Japan should actively deal with the past. At the same time, an exhibition related to the Nanjing massacre and Japanese military comfort women was held in Beijing. Japan expressed its strong regret that it was an unproven fact, but China did not care. The process of concluding the bilateral and multilateral FTAs in the past as a comprehensive regional free trade agreement is not an easy one. Each country has its strengths and weaknesses. For example, in Korea, automobiles, shipbuilding, and batteries want to be open, while agricultural products and livestock products want to avoid opening. Representatives of each country gathered at the meeting to reconcile their interests. During the talks, I met Li Sui, Director of Commerce in Beijing. He greeted me as if he were meeting an old friend. Haha. Welcome, Mr. Kong. Li Sui, Director of Commerce, said, frightened to sit down. It will definitely come out within the year. Thank you. I have to prepare accordingly. It was not long ago that China resumed the reopening. However, it is still not easy to pass it. There are many requests to modify it to suit the taste of the authorities. The problem is that if you do that, you'll have to rip and fix the entire game content. If the request for revision is severe, President Ichikawa would rather not release it. However, seeing this saying, it can be said that the issuance of the plate is certain without any modifications. If Lost Fantasy succeeds at the box office in China, OTK Games' profit margin will double at once. Fortunately, the atmosphere is very good. Currently, anti-Japanese sentiment is also boiling in China, so it was impossible for Japanese games to receive a new edition. It is difficult to update even the games that were previously serviced. There are people who say that Lost Fantasy is also a Japanese game, but OTK Games is a subsidiary of OTK Company, and recently moved its headquarters to the United States. In addition, thanks to the current boycott in Japan, we were able to erase the remaining image of the Japanese game. After the Panho talk was over, Lee Sue, commerce manager, gently brought up a different topic. We are planning to build a TWR in Xinjiang. Somehow he said he would give the plate easily. After all, nothing is free in this world. There are 3 important things for a country to become a hegemon: economic power, military power, and energy. Unlike the US, which achieved energy independence thanks to shale gas and shale oil, China still has to supply energy from outside. Therefore, China has increased the proportion of nuclear power plants and has taken the lead in the supply of electric vehicles. Of course, oil will still be used as important in many industries, but by reducing the use of oil in power plants and automobiles, the dependence on external energy for energy can be greatly reduced. Likewise, he was interested in TWR and was active in development. Originally, China cooperated with an American company, but it was stopped after the US-China trade dispute. Meanwhile, Rosatom succeeded in development and commercialization first. Therefore, we are currently forming an alliance with Rosatom and discussing stake participation and technology transfer. South Korea has no choice but to support China's construction of the TWR. This is because if China expands its thermal power plants, fine dust will flow to the Korean peninsula, and if there is a problem with the nuclear power plant, it will be hit directly by radiation. If you do not want to live in Simanjium while breathing in fine dust or radioactivity, you should rather actively help with construction. As you know, a special law was made to allow 100% foreign capital to build a factory. I hope Keras will advance into China. We will review that part after consultation. There are many people who hate China, but no one hates the Chinese market. It's just a matter of timing, but Keras will also have to enter the Chinese market someday. China is currently leading the world in autonomous driving after the United States. Autonomous driving is closely related to big data. China, which has a huge domestic market of 1.5 billion won, is also optimized for data collection. China, which has a huge domestic market of 1.5 billion won, is also optimized for data collection. Developed countries have various regulations on personal information collection, but China has none. The state is collecting data by creating a CCTV monitoring system that monitors the entire nation. On the other hand, it meant that there was no need to look at the eyes of other powers in lifting the autonomous driving regulations. If it is judged that the technological prowess of its own companies is accumulated, China will probably loosen regulations faster than any other country and open the era of autonomous driving. In fact, Chinese automakers such as ZhouT and BID have accumulated considerable technological prowess and are operating partially autonomous vehicles with permission from the authorities. Since it is an early stage, malfunctions and accidents are not uncommon. Although the media is resting, I know that there have been several fatal accidents. You may be ridiculed by saying, well then, but quantitative growth is bound to lead to qualitative growth. When China first made high-speed rail, there were not 1 or 2 accidents and breakdowns, but now it has grown to a level where its quality is recognized in the global market. How long will it take for China to catch up with our autonomous driving and OTK battery technology? I told Lee Sue, Director of Commerce. We had a good conversation. We will organize and respond as soon as possible to the parts you gave us proposals for. I met with President Vysotsky, the Prime Minister of Vietnam, and the Prime Minister of Thailand in turn to discuss future investment directions. Everyone seems to be paying close attention to the changes that the Inter-Korean Economic Cooperation and Free Trade Agreement will bring. And I finally met President Zhang Pinghua. He grabbed my hand and smiled warmly like the man next door. It's been a while, sir. Welcome to Beijing. We sat down and drank tea and talked. He mostly listened to him rather than spoke. The topics of conversation were varied. Games, batteries, automobiles, TWR, North Korea's reform and opening up, Japan's constitutional amendment, etc. I remembered the words of Professor Wei Hebei, whom I met at the Asian Economic Forum. As he said, the Chinese economy is currently facing a number of difficulties. China is also trying to use this event as an opportunity. As China is a country with a large trade volume with North Korea, it is highly likely to benefit the most from opening up the North Korean market. I would like to create a direct flight and ferry route between Simanjiam and Shanghai. It will be a great help for both cities to develop together. Do you mean to give strength to Simanjiam development? Is this also part of the Belt and Road Initiative? You can think of it that way. At the meeting, President Zhang Pinghua revealed his plan to link the railway on the Korean peninsula to the Belt and Road Initiative. One Belt, One Road is a plan to connect not only Eurasia but also Africa centered on China as one. There are more than 60 countries included. This is an issue that had been in progress to some extent with North Korea before. China is also very interested in North Korea's resources and markets. And North Korea always needs foreign currency. In fact, there is nothing bad about the one-on-one in itself. What's wrong with connecting the world in one way? The problem is that it can be used to expand China's hegemony. To build the Belt and Road infrastructure, Chinese companies and capital have actively entered foreign countries with the support of the Chinese government, and are taking control of the country's economic sphere. Some of the weaker countries groan with a huge debt to China, or lose their self-sufficiency and are incorporated into the Chinese economic bloc. For this reason, the United States, the G2, is of course holding in check, and Europe, which is part of the Belt and Road Initiative, also expressed strong vigilance. But there is no business in front of money. Germany, France, and Italy turned in favor of China money scattered by China. And Britain quickly expressed its intention to participate. In any case, if the Korean Peninsula Railway is merged with the Belt and Road Initiative, it will extend to the end of Europe in the west and to the Korean Peninsula in the east. As always, crisis and opportunity coexist like two sides of the same coin. If we take advantage of the Belt and Road Initiative, it can be a great opportunity for us as well. If it's Korea today, it won't be easy for Chinese capital. Again, Japan is excluded here. Japan, too, hastily expressed its intention to participate in the Belt and Road Initiative, but for now I'm ignoring. During the conversation I suddenly had a question. When Zhou Cha stole the technology, I used the US to corner China. He refused to negotiate and he received an apology and a large settlement amount. He might be angry about that, but Zhang Pinghua has not shown much hostility since then. In any case, he seems to have a crush on him. If you're saying you're that kind of person, it's not. He was famous for thoroughly eliminating his enemies. What do you think of me, sir? Perhaps it was a random question. Zhang Pinghua put down his tea and thought for a moment, and then after a while he opened his mouth. There are people in this world who are born with a certain fate. Some are born as emperors and bring down the country, while others are born without possessions and ascend to the throne. Looking at Chinese history, there are surprisingly many such people. Liu Bang, who founded Han Yuanzhua, who founded the Ming Dynasty, and Mao Zedong, who founded the People's Republic of China. And I guess so would you. His father was a revolutionary veteran who accompanied Mao Zedong on the Long March. However, it was overthrown during the Cultural Revolution, and he was deported and driven to the countryside with his family. No one would have thought that he would rise to the position of supreme power in China. However, he changed the constitution that banned consecutive terms, paving the way for long-term rule, and becoming the most powerful leader of China since Mao Zedong. At my words, Zhang Pinghua smiled brightly. Read more at wuxiax.com. If it's an opponent you can't defeat in a fight, wouldn't it be better to be friends? If you're telling me this, you mean you've chosen to be friends? There are no permanent enemies or allies in the world. They hold hands if they benefit each other, otherwise they turn their backs relentlessly. That is why Korea also trades with countries that once invaded them and trades with communist countries. He got up from his seat and said, "There is a saying, Mayang Sejajiji. Talents who came down to the world in obedience to the commandments of heaven, or Tao, refers to those who will correct an error. I believe that one person can change the world. If you look at the history of China, there have been countless instances of that." The gaze of the old man in the wheelchair was fixed on the TV. A dwarf body, twisted legs, and a face full of wrinkles and age spots. Although he may look ugly on the outside, this old man has the power to rule the world economy and the financial world. But no matter how much money and fame he has, he cannot avoid getting old and sick. He was still breathing because of the power of modern medicine. But unlike his dying body, his eyes still glowed strong. Those eyes seemed to say that you can't die until you've done your job. There was news about an Asian on TV. As a result, the international situation changed and many predictions were wrong. And someone suffered a huge loss. When he first appeared in the financial world, he was just a carefree kid, but less than 5 years later he became the most famous person in the world. Those who opposed him fell, and those who believed and followed him made great profits. Now who can ignore him? More frightening is his age and growth rate. As the size of the capital increases, the rate of return falls, but the absolute amount increases. What will happen after a few more years like this? At that time he may have grown into a being that even the Rothschilds could not deal with. In a way, this is your last chance to face him. Grand Darrell Rothschild struggled to open his mouth. Even his voice didn't come out properly, but his granddaughter standing in front of him understood what he was saying. Grace Rothschild said with a faint smile, "Hey Grandpa, are you saying the time has come?" A family reunion was held at Mt. Jumgang. At the reunion that took place for 3 days and 2 nights, separated families, who are now elderly, met and hugged each other and burst into tears. This was the signal for the resumption of Mt. Kumgang tourism. In response to changes in North Korea, the United States proposed a North Korea-US summit, and North Korea responded to this. There have been rumors that sanctions on North Korea may be lifted through this North Korea-US summit. If that happens, it was a huge boon for Korea. Economic research institutes predicted that the economic growth rate could rise to more than 5% next year when inter-Korean economic cooperation is in full swing. The people and businesses all cheered, but not everyone welcomed the situation. When inter-Korean relations, which had been troublesome, also entered a mode of reconciliation, approval ratings for the president and the new political party soared to over 60%. On the other hand, the Liberal National Party's approval rating is now showing signs of collapse of even 20%. Both conservatives and liberals have a solid 20% approval rating. This collapse meant that even the core supporters were leaving. As international public opinion is rising that Japan should apologize to the Comfort Women victims, the Comfort Women agreement reached by the previous administration continued to hold the party's ankles. In the meantime, Representative Yoon Nak-young and members of the Liberty Korea Party have argued that the Korea-Japan Comfort Women Agreement was a very good agreement and that it was inevitable, so it was difficult to change positions now. The liberal Kuomintang has traditionally valued cooperation with Japan. This is because they decided that cooperating with Japan and the United States against China, Russia, and North Korea would be in the national interest. Without cooperation and exchanges with Japan, could Korea have developed to this extent? According to the logic of power, if necessary, we should bow our heads to China and also bow our heads to the United States. Then what can't Japan do? So, when the order mistake at Nishida Securities occurred, he said that Toyota shares should be returned. and he argued that Korea should forgive Japan's export restrictions. Otherwise, I thought the damage would come back to Korea. However, what happened has always been the opposite. It is the same this time. Korea had already occupied the advantageous position, and it was Japan that suffered damage. Therefore, the argument of the liberal Kuomintang was nothing but surrender when our side was winning. As the decline in approval ratings accelerated, a crisis theory emerged that the entire Conservative Party could be destroyed both inside and outside the party. There were also voices of opposition among the members of the Liberal People's Party. Aren't we supposed to support inter-Korean economic cooperation even now? What is the party theory of the Liberal National Party? Isn't it the party's argument to be unconditionally opposed? We have to talk about the people's eyes. If this continues, next year's general election will be a loss at least. When the decline in approval rating reached a serious level, party leaders and members of the metropolitan area gathered to call for the general resignation of the leadership. Representative Kim Jae-yun, a fourth-term senior, announced that he would not run for the general election. The Liberal National Party has been abandoned by the people. The leadership must resign, and members of the three-term or higher legislature must take responsibility and step down. The only way the Conservatives can come back to life is to put everything down and rebuild the party from scratch. Representative Na Kyung-yeon proposed a one-on-one meeting between the president and the opposition leader regarding her recent issues. The idea was to change her position by pretending to make concessions, while at the same time showing her confrontation with the president through the summit meeting. But she turned it down because the Blue House is busy. Seo-yun Na-kyung held a leadership meeting. She didn't like the look of all the lawmakers gathered at her seat, and she never thought that the ruling Liberal Kuomintang, the ruling party of the last administration, would be so cornered. The ruling party continues to demand the passage of a special law on inter-Korean economic cooperation, she said. It looks like they are putting pressure on public opinion. As things are going smoothly, there is no good reason to object. The Blue House and the new political party seem to be encouraged by the rise in approval ratings. To be honest, the government and the ruling party didn't do much. Without Kang Jin-ho, the damage caused by the Korea-Japan conflict would continue, and inter-Korean relations would still be in a cold state. It was as if Kang Jin-ho had done everything. I just put a spoon on the board that Jin-ho Kang made and the approval rating soared like that. If I had known this would happen, our party should have talked about inter-Korean economic cooperation first. If you change the party's policy line now, you will be supporting the Blue House, the ruling party, and Kang Jin-ho. The bigger problem is the opposition of party members. They say that the first-time lawmakers in the metropolitan area will have a sit-down demanding the leadership resign. First of all, you have to do something. Representative Yun Na-kyung declared a hunger strike by the leadership. The territory of the Republic of Korea is the Korean Peninsula and its annexed islands, and the North Koreans are also our citizens. Nevertheless, our government is trying to join hands with the worst dictatorship that oppresses the human rights of North Koreans. This is an act of denying the identity of the Republic of Korea. However, the method was a bit absurd. The leadership said that they would continue fasting in 5.5-hour shifts. The reaction of the people was that they were stunned rather than absurd. It's the first time I've seen fasting as a relay. What is relay fasting? Does that mean that one person eats while the other doesn't? Hey, relay fast for 5.5 hours. It's the most creative fasting method I've ever seen. I admit creative singles. Is that what you're doing right now? Do not. Please don't do that. Minus 50 hours is not enough. 5.5 hours? Are you kidding? So you're saying you eat breakfast at 8, lunch at 1:30 and dinner at 7 o'clock. Where the hell do you see this fasting? So, are all the people fasting in Korea? Members of Parliament. It's not about fasting, it's about not eating snacks. Why is the shame on me tea? Ramadan must be tougher than that. Children of Inama. Hit them all. Just starve and search. The ambitious relay singles did not show the leadership's resolve. but rather became the object of ridicule of the whole nation. After criticism from even the supporters poured in, the liberal Kuomintang abruptly withdrew the struggle. Contrary to calling the media and declaring a struggle, he looked shabby. The leadership once again entered an emergency meeting. We had to find a way to somehow suppress the opposition within the party and raise the party's approval rating. While several measures were being discussed, such as a boycott of the National Assembly and the general resignation of members, Representative Ma Sang-tae suggested it. How about the president having a hunger strike? At that, Seo Yun Nakyung was taken aback. Am I fasting? Fasting is usually a way of fighting for the weak. It's the New Politics Party which has many activists. Many lawmakers have fasted. President Ha Chong-min also fasted for 9 days when he was a member of the opposition party. However, there was no way Representative Na Kyung-yeon had such an experience. Last time you said you were going to shave, didn't you have media coverage and support from your supporters? If you say you are fighting a hunger strike, your supporters will surely gather. This is the only way to maximize the meaning of the struggle. Oh no, I'd rather shave my hair. A shave is the end of cutting your hair. It's a bit ugly to look at, but it's the hair that grows back anyway. But not eating is not easy. The shave was already done by many other lawmakers last time. It is difficult to make an impact on the people by doing the same thing again. Other lawmakers also joined in with the words of Representative Ma Sang-tae. You have to show clear determination by fighting hunger. Anyway, the Blue House will dissuade them and the ruling party will dissuade them. It will be a big issue if the supporters are worried and go fasting together. Assemblyman Ma Sang-tae said again. We will continue to support you so that you can consume the least amount of nutrients in between. If you hold on like that for just a week, the media will say that your health is abnormal and your life is in danger, and the ruling party and the Blue House will react. Then we will come forward and forcibly transport you to the hospital. Seo Yun Nakyung thought carefully. I don't know how effective fasting will be in changing government policy under the current circumstances. But at least it will certainly work to stifle opposition within the party. In order to survive the next general election, it was advantageous to hold the position of party leader until then. Seo Yun Nakyung has made a decision. I was having dinner with Taekyu in the company cafeteria, and a breaking news came out on the TV. It was none other than the announcement of a single by Seo Nakyung-yeon. Representative Yun Nakyung, who appeared on TV, stood in front of reporters gathered at the National Assembly and said, The Heo Chong-min regime's evil intentions to destroy the country continue, she said. We cannot delay the struggle any longer because we are worried about the national crisis. The stability and prosperity of the Republic of Korea in the past 70 years was possible because of the cooperation between Korea, the United States and Japan. However, the Ha Chong-min regime is breaking this formula of success. If the government does not protect the people but rather puts them into a crisis, the only role I can play as the leader of the first opposition party is to fight to the death. Starting today, I will start the fight against hunger with the determination to live my life. Taekyu looked at him and admired it. 5. Our representative Yun is fighting for hunger. It's a hunger strike. Do you want that to work? Aren't you supposed to be by my side too? I asked absurdly. Why me? Wouldn't the people be happy if the representatives battle each other? If you want to do that, you do it. Team leader Seo Sang-won, who was eating next to him, said as if muttering. Fasting is not as easy as it seems. It's a series of pain and patience. If anyone hears it, I'm sure you've done it. Taekyu nodded his head. I actually did. 5. Really? Team leader Seo Sang-won smiled mischievously. When I was in college, I got into sports for a while. I pushed my back and tried it a few times, but it wasn't something a human would do. I thought I only walked the elite course, but there must have been such a past. Other staff members, including Yuri, also listened to our conversation. Team leader Seo Sang-won put down his chopsticks and started explaining in earnest. Actually, the most important thing in hunger strikes is not when you start but when you finish. Taijayu said. Isn't it over when the requirements are accepted? That's the best, but it doesn't happen very often. But can't we starve to death if the requirements are not met? However, it is difficult to withdraw from fasting on my own. Then what do you do? It's one of the two. They either quit as if they have no choice but to collapse or pretend they have collapsed and be taken to the hospital. Come to think of it, most hunger strikes seem to have ended like that. Read more at wuxiax.com. Taeyong nodded his head. A senator said, I've seen a lot of fasting lawmakers, but I've never seen a single person die of starvation. That's right. I asked Seo Sangwon, the team leader. How is the hunger strike process? Before you start, you need to fill your stomach. If you eat too much, you may get a stomach ache, so the level you want to feel full is appropriate. The food in the intestine is completely digested, which takes about 3 days. After that, it's a battle of physical and mental strength. Up to 3 days there is still food in the stomach, so it is well tolerated. Even on the 4th day he somehow manages to survive with his mental strength, but on the 5th day he becomes truly insane. It's hard to move because I'm hungry, I can't sleep when I'm lying still, and I have only thoughts of food in my head. I usually give up at this point. This time Taekyu asked. Isn't there a case of fasting for tens of days for that kind of thing? The last time I saw a member of the new political party, he had been fasting for over 3 weeks. There are people who actually do that, but it is very dangerous. You could really die then. So, in some cases tricks are used. A trick? Do you secretly hide food and eat it? Team leader Seo Sangwon shook his head. I don't eat food. There is a high chance of getting it and it is difficult to digest. Usually they hide glucose candy or nutritional supplements and eat them. Sometimes I secretly drink something like soy milk or the morning sun. Taeyong narrowed his eyes. Is it the morning sun? It's a drink made from rice. Team leader Seo Sangwon nodded his head. Right. Just one bottle will keep you full all day. There are ways that I never really thought of. It wouldn't be that easy to fast. People are hungry even if they only starve for one meal. No matter how clever you are, it won't be hard work, both physically and mentally. But do you really want to do this? I don't really know why I'm doing it. Taeyong asked again. How long can Seo Yun Nakyung fast? If you do it right, you won't last a week. Those who have eaten meat eat well, and those who have starved rice starve well. Fasting is not something that a person who grew up like a flower in a greenhouse can do easily. Will I still be able to last a week? Team leader Seo Sangwon answered firmly. I don't know if it's a trick, but otherwise it's absolutely impossible. I'm guessing. Besides, isn't it winter now? Fasting is more difficult in winter because you burn a lot of calories. That's right. When I see Taekyu smiling at me, I get nervous. What else are you thinking about? Taekyu answered my question. What a pointless thought. Seo Yun Nakyung said he was fasting and he wanted to give even a little help. Team leader Seo Sangwon nodded his head. Right. Just one bottle will keep you full all day. There are ways that I never really thought of. It wouldn't be that easy to fast. People are hungry even if they only starve for one meal. No matter how clever you are, it won't be hard work, both physically and mentally. But do you really want to do this? I don't really know why I'm doing it. Taeyong asked again. How long can Seo Yun Nakyung fast? If you do it right, you won't last a week. Those who have eaten meat eat well, and those who have starved rice starve well. Fasting is not something that a person who grew up like a flower in a greenhouse can do easily. Will I still be able to last a week? Team leader Seo Sangwon answered firmly. I don't know if it's a trick, but otherwise it's absolutely impossible. I'm guessing. Besides, isn't it winter now? Fasting is more difficult in winter because you burn a lot of calories. That's right. When I see Taekyu smiling at me, I get nervous. What else are you thinking about? Taekyu answered my question. What a pointless thought. Seo Yun Nakyung said he was fasting and he wanted to give even a little help. When the leader of the first opposition party declared a hunger strike, the Blue House and the ruling party came forward again. The ruling party members pretended to stop, even though they didn't know why they're fasting now. However, Yun Nak-young did not give up. The security and economy of South Korea has collapsed. Liberal democracy is being trampled on mercilessly. What can we gain from the deterioration of Korea-Japan relations? We must face the government's violence with the preparedness of death. The only thing I fear is that the value of a free Republic of Korea may be lost. However, at this point OTK Company announced it in the name of the Vice President. First, I would like to pay my respects to Yun Nak-young, the leader of the Liberal People's Party, who started the hunger strike with the spirit of patriotism and loyalty. The declaration of hunger strike by the leader of the first opposition party provided an opportunity to reflect on the position of the company. However, I think that stopping the hunger strike is breaking the will of President Yun Nak-young and furthermore the Liberal People's Party. So I'd like to make a suggestion. If CEO Yun Nak-young succeeds in the hunger strike for a week in front of OTK Company, CEO Kang Jin, who will personally visit the company to apologize and take the lead in finding a new solution to Korea-Japan relations. It seems to be encouraging hunger strikes. What company in the world would behave this way? However, the travels of the vice president of OTK Company were not too surprising as they were already widely known. Liberal Kuomintang lawmakers and supporters were outraged. This is encouraging, what is it? When the leftists were fighting hunger, they shouted that people should be saved first. Chang Min-hyo, do you remember what you said while fasting? Everyone. This is the personality of leftists. Where are the leftists spending a day or two? Anyway, when this happened, CEO Yun Nak-young could not step down. Some lawmakers said we should not fall for provocations, but CEO Yun Nak-young had a different idea. It is everyone's wish to see Jin Hu Kong bow his head and apologize. Winning here is not sure if the leftist evil will end, but the fact that he received an apology from Kang Jin who will help him gain firm support from the conservatives. Are you sure you can? It won't be easy to fast for a week. Representative Ma Sang-tae said strongly. You must do it. We will do our best to support our members. In the case of lawmakers who have fasted so far, they have been fasting for about 10 days. This time it's a shorter week. Besides, it will be tolerable as long as you don't really eat anything. CEO Yun Nak-young hardened her expression and said confidently, if I can protect the security of the Republic of Korea and normalize Korea-Japan relations, I will do anything. When an article went out that CEO Yun Nak-young had accepted the vice president's proposal, everyone knew intuitively. The fact that this is the last confrontation between the conservative forces following Park Si-hyung, Lee Jong-hae and Yun Nak-young and the OTK Company. Conservative groups such as the Parents' Union and the Mothers' Army and supporters of the Liberal National Party declared a general uprising. Let's follow CEO Yun Nak-young. We will be together. Let's show the will to pay. Long live President Park Si-hyung. Release Your Excellency. In the next presidential election we support Mr. Nak-young Yun. O reward of all nations. Gather in front of OTK Company. The Liberal National Party pitched a tent in front of the OTK Company. Nak-young Yun, the CEO, fully filled her stomach before fasting, and came from the hospital to receive nutritional injections. He said he would fast with the intention of dying, but it was natural as he was not really thinking of dying. Numerous supporters flocked to them from the first day, and CEO Yun Nak-young greeted them with a smile. Next to the representatives' tent, other lawmakers also decided to fight a relay hunger strike. As if conscious of the previous criticism, this time it was 12 hours instead of 5.5 hours. Although some criticized it as an intermittent hunger strike, or a Ramadan hunger strike, many supporters voluntarily participated. It wasn't just conservative groups. Protests and rallies from progressive groups also continued. A comfort woman grandmother visited the scene and shouted, "I've been going to Wednesday rallies for nearly 20 years to get an apology from Japan," she said. "I've seen a lot of protests asking for an apology, but this is the first time I've seen people protesting not to apologize." Which country is the Alternative Liberal National Party? Again, as it was related to Kang Jin-hu, the media around the world were interested. The Japanese media were also paying close attention. If Seo Yun Nakyung succeeded in the hunger strike, there seemed to be an expectation that the strained Korea-Japan relationship would be resolved. Among the LDP lawmakers, there was an opinion that it should be possible to visit Nakyung Yun, the leader of the party, and encourage him, but he decided to support only with his heart, judging that it could be rather harmful. I sighed as I looked at the tents and protesters in front of the building. It is still a question of why Nakyung Yun, the CEO, is fasting. Taekyu looks excited. Encouragement and support are pouring in from Japan too. In fact, not only LDP lawmakers, but also net right-wingers and anti-Korean groups are doing their best to pray for the victory of Seo Yun Nakyung. Has she ever had a Korean politician who was so loved by Japan? Indeed, you are taking the lead in the development of Korea-Japan relations. But what are you doing now? Taekyu said as he typed hard. We are pushing the conspiracies of the pro-North Korean leftists to conservative A-tubes. The third day of hunger strike, Seo Yun Nakyung learned what hunger is for the first time in her life. She wanted to go home, eat and lie down right away, but she drank warm water and survived. Fortunately, from now on, other lawmakers have decided to secretly supply nutritional supplements. But there's a problem. Team leader Lee Cheol-jin took the bodyguard to the tent. Fortunately, from now on, other lawmakers have decided to secretly supply nutritional supplements. But there's a problem. Team leader Lee Cheol-jin took the ex-cop bodyguard to the tent. There is a lot of public support to protect the president. Hasn't there ever been a time when Assemblyman Ma Sang-tae was fighting a hunger strike, and the fast was ended because a gangster swung his fists? If someone harms the CEO, that is the responsibility of the OTK company. We will protect you thoroughly so that such a thing does not happen. Behind him stood 3 female bodyguards. They are from the drug detection team. He has a knack for finding dangerous things. From this time on, we will thoroughly search the tent where the CEO is located, the area around it, and even the toilet bowl you go to, so that there will be no unsavory things. At that, Seo Yun Nakyung was taken aback. It's nice to say, bodyguard. Aren't you saying you're going to monitor me so I can't eat? The problem did not end here. Conservative A-tubers flocked to see what the hell they were talking about. In the meantime, the leftists have struggled with hunger and ate by adding glucose to water or receiving nutritional supplements from visitors. Now the leftists are mocking that Seo Yun Nakyung is secretly eating food. We have received information that the pro-North Korean forces secretly add glucose to the water that the president will drink in order to interfere with the hunger strike, or that they are trying to force the president to feed something by convincing visitors. Yes. They say they are going to use that as an excuse to make the promise unfulfilled. Seo Yun Nakyung shook her head. Oh no. Could it be? I am fine. No. Even if they don't do that, leftists will definitely get a hold of it. From now on, we will broadcast the representatives' hunger strike live for 24 hours alternately, check the bottled water brought in, and check each visitor's belongings so that the leftists do not gossip. I believe you will show the conservative spirit to the pro-North Korean leftists. Seo Yun Nakyung could not contain his absurdity. Are these guys really going to starve to death? He said he was going to starve himself, but it didn't matter. The 4th day of hunger strike. I somehow managed to survive up to 3 days, but after another day there I really thought I was going to die. I couldn't think of anything other than eating. She said to the MP who came to see him. Hey, do you have anything to eat? He shook her head. Sorry. I did a body search in front. Seo Yun Nakyung's face was stained with despair. I don't think I can stand it any longer. I need to stop the hunger strike. He knew what the pain was like as he had also struggled with hunger. So, from the 3rd day onwards he worked hard to take glucose and nutritional supplements. It was still hard, but how would Seo Yun Nakyung, who really ate nothing? I can't stand it any longer. The most important thing in hunger strike is not when it starts but when it ends. Lobster is on the side and members of the National Assembly are on the side. Anyone who fasts will leave the camp and come to stop them. But this time the deputy leader warned before the start. If there is a politician who is obstructing the hunger strike of Seo Yun Nak-young, I will hold a campaign to lose the election in the next general election, he said. How many lawmakers have been hurt by Kang Jin-hu so far? The ruling party lawmakers did not even come close to the deputy leader's remarks as an excuse. Because of that, it was impossible to stop pretending not to win. But there was no other way. Assemblyman Ma Sang-tae said in a whisper in a low voice. In case of such a situation, we deliberately did not give permission for the assembly. As it is an illegal assembly, if it comes to the forcible demolition, we will have no choice but to stop the struggle. At those words, Seo Na-kyung opened his eyes and twinkled. Well done. In the process, if he collapses while protesting that it is conservative oppression, it will be even better. Representative Ma Sang-tae contacted a member of the Seoul Metropolitan Government belonging to the Liberal People's Party. Then came an astonishing answer. I have permission to assemble. He was astonished. No what? Who applied? OTK company applied for 10 days. So until then you can keep holding meetings. Oh, I see. I'm sure these guys even got permission. Representative Ma Sang-tae hung up the phone and spoke to Seo Yun Nak-young. Now we have no choice but to endure to the end, Seo. Seo Yun Nak-young felt his eyes turn yellow. The hunger strike had already entered the 6th day. He had no energy to move or speak. I looked through the electric blanket with my hands, just in case, but nothing caught on. At some point I started to see vein and hear tinnitus. It reminded me of former President Park Si-hyung, whom I once met. He is currently in prison wearing a shroud. How is he feeling now? The comfort women I had seen at the protest the other day shuddered. Would they have suffered the same as I did? As much as she favored and supported the Korea-Japan Comfort Women Agreement during her previous administration, she too knew what the comfort women victims had been through. But that was a long time ago and it didn't really touch me emotionally. On several occasions she has said that comfort women victims must understand and accept Japan's position for the development of Korea-Japan relations, but now it feels like she knows the pain. Her life was a flower road. She was born in a wealthy family and she studied well, so she entered the Korean University Law Department, after which she passed the exam and served as a judge. As a proportional representative of the Korean Party, she entered politics splendidly, and after that she won the constituency and was re-elected for 3 consecutive terms. She rose from the fringe of the party to the position of party leader that she dreamed of at some point. She thought maybe she might one day get a chance to become president too. But everything was just a dream. Why the hell did this happen? No matter how much I thought about it, there was only one reason why I was driven to fasting. An image of a person appeared in her mind. All of this is because of the earthquake, and her vice president was also very angry. Okay, die if you want. If he dies while fighting the hunger like this, the people's criticism will pour out towards the Blue House, the ruling party, and Kang Jin-hu who killed him. It was the most powerful revenge she could ever take. Thinking of her after the earthquake, kneeling before her own grave and begging her forgiveness, she felt ready to die. With her own death, her liberal Kuomintang can come back to life. She will become a conservative holy martyr. Perhaps this is the greatest revenge that can be given to his enemies in Kang Jin-hu? Her eyes closed slowly. Then as her eyes darkened, only one thought burned like a flame. It was her infinite desire for life. He can't die like this. Does it matter whether the conservatives resurrect after her death or not? Shouldn't you be living for a while? Having made her decision, she struggled to get her body up. Read more at wuxiax.com. When Seo Yun Nak-young came out of the tent, the supporters all clapped and cheered. Wow! She opened her mouth and spoke in a voice that didn't come out well. Please save me. Please. Representative Ma State, who was guarding her seat while performing relay fasts next to her, blocked her in surprise, and Representative Lee Yunju covered her mouth. Reporters pointed at the camera and asked questions. "What did you just say? I think you asked for help, right?" Senator Makeda shouted quickly. "You said you want to save the Republic of Korea that is groaning left-handed. Even in this situation, the CEO is only concerned about the future of the Republic of Korea." The supporters cheered again. "Wow. As expected, Seo Yun Nak-young. We will be together until the end." Representative Ma Sang-tae instructed Representative Lee Yunju to go inside the tent with the representative as soon as possible. "If it survives like this for one more day, the Liberal People's Party will win. I couldn't spoil everything here. The representative will want it too." However, Seo Yun Nak-young had a completely different opinion. "No. Whether the Republic of Korea dies or not, please save me. If you are dragged into the tent like this, you may really starve to death." She bit her hand that was covering her mouth. The moment Representative Lee Yunju lifted her hand while screaming at her, she raised her voice and shouted, "Help me. Please save me. I will stop fasting." This time everyone heard it for sure. Everyone in her looked at her with her expression lost for words. The state senator looked at her with her eager eyes. She looked as if she wanted to tell her even now that it was a joke. But she had no intention of undoing her own words. "I was too hungry for that." In the midst of the chaos of screams and sighs, someone came and took her hand, and she lifted her head to look at her opponent. She was a Comfort Women grandmother who came out to a protest held opposite her. Her grandmother looked at Seo Nak-young with her worried eyes and held the open morning sunlight in her hand. "Are you very hungry? Hey, drink it." Seo Yun Nak-young drank it hesitantly. The warm grain drink that ran down her throat was like a lifesaver for her, exhausted from her hunger and her cold. Seo Nak-young unconsciously sat down on the spot and burst into tears. Her grandmother hugged her softly and patted her on the back. Seo Yun Nak-young's fast ended in exactly 1 hour and 43 minutes on 6 days. The Liberal National Party's approval rating plummeted again, and the leadership, including Representative Yun Nak-young, took responsibility and resigned. It was none other than the morning sunlight that gained the greatest reflex benefit from this. The scene of Seo Yun Nak-young drinking the morning sun went out to media all over the world, and domestic sales increased by 250% and overseas orders increased by more than 100%. I went with Ellie to my mother's hotel. We sat in the hotel coffee shop and waited as her mother had been away for a while. As if there was a step meeting, business wives rushed in. When they saw me, they quickly approached us. There were many faces that I had greeted before. "Good morning. Hyo Kang-jin-hu. You came today with your mother-in-law. Your mother is so beautiful. Maybe this will suit you well. Congratulations on your marriage." All of the business wives pretended to be close, calling Ellie her wife. After they had gone to the other seats, I asked Ellie, "Doesn't the title Mama look a little old?" Ellie grinned. "How are you?" "I am good." He seems to be enjoying this situation. "Well, if you like Ellie, it doesn't matter." I asked her, "Who are Ellie's parents?" As I said before, Ellie was born to a Korean Hong Kong father and a British mother. And both of them are currently working in Hong Kong. He's a good guy. You are always worried about me. Ellie is the only child like me. She says she's probably worried about her because she's the only girl, so she said she wanted her to stay if she could, even when she said she was going to the Korean branch. Although she still respected her daughter's will and let her go. She told her parents that she had a boyfriend after meeting Jin-hu, she said. "I didn't tell you about Kang Jin-hu. You must have been surprised when you found out. Of course. You are still amazed." After she did a commercial photo shoot, the fact that we were dating went out in the press and made the world known, Ellie, she says, and her house was turned upside down, she says. She couldn't have imagined that the man her daughter was dating would be the richest man in the world. "Your parents must like me." Ellie laughed and said, I am sure you will like it. I wish I did. After the meeting, you will feel that you are really getting married, right? As we were drinking coffee together, I saw snowflakes falling outside the window. Ellie looked up at her snowy sky with a happy expression on her face. So pretty. It's the first snow this year. The people who were sitting in the coffee shop and talking were all looking out the window. Ellie jumped up and grabbed my arm from her. Wake up. Where are you going? I'm going out to meet the snow. I laughed out loud. Are you a kid? Come on. Oh, okay. December is the month of settlement. As the year's business is over and the accounting is confirmed, all companies have been busy and financial companies have been particularly busy. Although there are some differences between individual companies, it was generally evaluated that Korean financial companies did well this year. Because the market was good. The Kospi, which stayed at the 2000 line for 10 years, broke through the 3000 mark, and is now facing 3,500 due to expectations for inter-Korean economic cooperation. Cyclical markets such as batteries, semiconductors, automobiles, electronics, and bio continue, and there is also a forecast that it may break the 4,000 mark next year. Slowly, talk of overweighting the MSCI index began to appear. One of the biggest reasons why the Korean economy was able to grow like this in spite of the global low-growth trend would be the OTK company. OTK company was so dependent on the individual's abilities that it could be called a private company after the earthquake. If he makes a mistake, the entire company is in a staggering structure. However, as if to ridicule such concerns, Kang Jin-woo led the world economy by demonstrating his outstanding investment skills this year. There was one more noteworthy thing about OTK company. This is the breakthrough of OTK games. The company's value soared with the success of Lost Fantasy Online following Lost Fantasy M. At the current growth rate, OTK Games is highly likely to overtake Faceit and become OTK company's two major industries along with Keris. It was none other than the vice president who decided to invest in OTK Games. In addition, not long ago he announced that he would do a hostile M&A against Ice Storm, which turned the whole game world upside down. Although it was overshadowed by Kang Jin-woo, the mayor's evaluation was that the vice president also had excellent insight. With the market moving without much volatility, shocking news from the U.S. hit the financial world. The U.S. Federal Reserve has announced that it will raise interest rates by 75 basis points or 0.75%. Federal Reserve Chairman Robert McClay spoke to reporters after the Federal Reserve ended. I am raising the federal funds rate, currently operating at 2% from 1.75%, to 2.75% from 2.5%. Because we met our employment and inflation targets early, and we believe the U.S. economy will continue to be robust, we believe that a sustained and phased rate hike is appropriate to meet and sustain the Fed's goals. As soon as the words were finished, reporters began to ask questions. The world was shocked by the news of the U.S. interest rate hike. The financial sector was not in a hurry. The stock market also experienced mixed fluctuations. Raising interest rates is proof that the U.S. economy is doing well. But at the same time, it meant that the money released from the market would be recovered and tightened. You might think that the 0.75% increase in interest rates is such a fuss. But if this is the U.S. base rate, it's a different story. As soon as I saw the announcement, I headed to the Golden Gate building. Taekyu followed him and asked, "Is it that big of a deal?" The base rate is the most powerful card the government can use against the market. Golden Gate was also in an emergency meeting. The employees are also busy monitoring the market. After waiting for about an hour, Hyunju's sister and Ellie returned to the office of the branch manager. "Did you expect this announcement?" Hyunju's older sister shook her head. Interest rates were at the bottom and the economy was booming. That interest rates would go up was something everyone had predicted. But this is too steep. In the meantime, the Fed has raised or lowered 0.25% in increments of 0.25% to check for changes in the market. But this time, it raised 0.75% at a time. This means that interest rates that will be raised 3 times are raised at once. The problem is in countries other than the United States. As Chairman Maclay said, the U.S. economy is strong. They probably raised interest rates because they thought they had enough room to survive. But what about other countries? It is no exaggeration to say that only the United States is doing well in the world economy these days. The California Restoration Project was the fuel that fueled the already booming U.S. economy. Thanks to this, not only IT and other high-tech industries, but also the construction and manufacturing industries were revived and entered a state of full employment. And now it is enough to worry about overheating of the economy. There are 2 main considerations in raising the base rate. It is the employment rate and inflation, said Ellie. In the United States, prices are fluctuating due to the booming economy. Inflation is also at its highest in 10 years. In both cases, sufficient conditions have been created to raise interest rates. Takeu crossed his arms and said, "Did not President Ronald hate rate hikes?" Chairman Maclay had previously expressed his opinion on an interest rate hike several times before, and each time President Ronald spit out slurs that were almost abusive because it was ruining the American economy. I shook my head. Rising interest rates is the prerogative of the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Even the president cannot interfere in it. As many people don't know, the Fed is a private, independent, non-governmental organization. This is not particularly strange. With only a difference in form, almost all countries guarantee the independence of central banks. This is because of the difference in their roles. The government prioritizes economic growth. Naturally, they prefer low interest rates rather than high interest rates and expansion rather than tightening. The central bank, on the other hand, prioritizes price stability. So, sometimes they cooperate and sometimes they check and lead the national economy. This is also true of Korea. Just as the United States is divided into the Ministry of Finance and the Federal Reserve, Korea is divided into the Ministry of Strategy and Finance and the Bank of Korea. In addition, the base rate is also independently determined by the governor of the Bank of Korea. But to the end, that is the principle, and the reality is that the government's influence is at work to some extent. At what point will interest rate hikes stop? At my question, Hyunju Nuna put on her glasses and said, "Well, as you can see, the US did not pay attention to other countries when raising interest rates. During the oil shock, the key interest rate was raised to 21% in a short period of time. In other words, even if you just put it in the bank, the principal will double in 4 years. Money flowed into the bank and the price surge caused by the oil shock has stabilized. However, as the dollar was overvalued, the U.S. manufacturing industry suffered a crisis, and the U.S. resolved the crisis by forcing its counterparty currency to appreciate. That's the famous Plaza Accord. In addition, interest rates were raised to 6.5% a year before the dot-com bubble and to 5.25% a year before the global financial crisis. The Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States. When the central bank raises interest rates, it is correct to consider only the domestic situation without paying attention to other countries. However, there is one difference between the Fed and the central banks of other countries. That is, the dollar is the key currency. The dollar is the reference point of money, and all currencies move in price in relation to the dollar. As such, it is no exaggeration to say that the Fed is effectively the world's central bank, and the interest rates of central banks around the world are determined by the base rate set by the Fed. Ellie objected. But isn't it a little different now? It would not be easy to not care about other countries like before. Read more at wuxiax.com. The current world economy is so closely connected that it is difficult to compare it with the past. The IMF crisis in Korea and the collapse of the real estate bubble in Japan in the 1990s did not have a significant impact on the world economy. But now the global economy is shaken by the crisis that occurred in Greece. If other countries are shocked by the rate hike, it is likely to return as a boomerang to the U.S. economy. No one knows what Chairman Maclay is thinking. But in terms of the intensity of his speech, it will not end here. Immediate rate hikes are also a problem, but Chairman Maclay's remarks were a bigger problem. He said he would raise interest rates continuously and gradually. This signaled that the Fed would continue to raise rates until it meets its target. Even if it's the same 0.75%, raising it that much when it's 5% and raising it that much when it's 1.75% is a different story. As a percentage, the former increased by 15%, but the latter by over 40%. In other words, for the borrower, the interest burden increases by more than 40% in an instant. What if it goes above 5%? Hyunju's older sister shook her head. It's impossible. How many countries do you think will survive those interest rates? Then there will be an unimaginable shock. Well, I guess so. Before the financial crisis, it was easy to find deposits that paid interest of 5% or more at any bank. However, after the financial crisis, the situation was completely different. Developed countries, including the United States, lowered interest rates and released unlimited money to prevent recession and deflation. And the money flowed all over the world. Low interest rates increase debt. And the increased debt makes it difficult to raise interest rates again. If you raise it to the maximum, the upper 3% will be the limit. Inflation is also a temporary phenomenon. In the past, when money was released, it was natural for prices to rise. However, the development of production technology, the realization of economies of scale and reduction of production costs due to the global value chain, the emergence of large distribution companies such as AMZ and Allegheny, and low oil prices have brought down prices. As my sister said, it would be a burden for the U.S. to keep raising interest rates. Ellie muttered. Chairman Maclay is not that hawkish. No one expected he would make such a choice. What kind of change of heart did you have? At that I stopped. I felt an unfamiliar feeling of insecurity. Normalizing low interest rates is natural. But is it just that? Maybe there is another reason? At that moment Eli looked at me and asked, "What's wrong?" "Yes. You're suddenly making a serious expression." I said with a smile. "It's nothing. Would that be a useless idea?" The U.S. Federal Reserve raises interest rates by 0.75%. The Fed weighs on further rate hikes. Maclay shock. How far is the shock? What does the base rate hike in December mean? Emerging market stock market, it is difficult to expect Santa rally. U.S. Treasury Department looks embarrassed by unexpected impressions. The White House's reaction. The shock of the U.S. interest rate hike has swept the world. The width of the hike was also a problem, but many evaluated that the timing was the worst. Everything in a company is seen through accounting. The size of profit and loss differed depending on the exchange rate on the settlement date. Therefore, it was an open secret that central banks of each country finally adjust the exchange rate at the end of the year. Not to mention companies in emerging countries that are directly affected by the exchange rate. U.S. companies were also in an uproar. Just because it's an American company doesn't mean it's only produced and sold in the United States. When the exchange rate of an emerging country falls, the sales and net profit generated in that country also decrease. Screams erupted from all sides. What do you think the Fed is thinking? If you're going to upload it, I'd rather upload it in January. What kind of crazy is this at a point where we are about to settle accounts? The shock to financial companies was even greater, and the bond market was also engulfed in chaos. In general, bond prices move in the opposite direction to interest rates. That is, when interest rates rise, bond prices fall, and when interest rates fall, bond prices rise. Even if the base rate moves by 0.75%, bond prices do not move by 0.75%. Even a slight change in interest rates, bond prices fluctuate by tens of percent. Bond investors have been hit hard by this rate hike. Funds with a large portion of bonds were even said to have spit out all of their returns in 1 year. Of course, there were many people who predicted a rate hike. But everyone thought it would increase gradually by 0.25% after the year went by, but no one thought it would be a drastic increase in December. If the chain is pulled hard, the weakest link is broken first, not where the force was applied. US stocks were down only 3%, but emerging markets were much more shocked. Money flows from low income to high income. Emerging market stocks and currencies fell sharply as investors sold EM stocks and moved out for dollars. The Argentine peso, already in the midst of a financial crisis, fell more than 50% in one day, and the Brazilian real fell 25%. Some countries have even announced measures to limit the amount of exchange per person to protect the exchange rate. In order to prevent capital outflow, central banks in each country must follow the US's footsteps in raising interest rates. Emerging countries including India, Brazil, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines have hastily announced interest rate hikes. The Bank of Korea also held an emergency meeting. After the 3-hour meeting, BOK Governor Hyun-Jun Lee announced the results of the meeting with a firm expression and a calm voice. If the US raises interest rates, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to raise them, he said. As Korea has sufficient foreign exchange reserves and continues to have a current account surplus, there is little risk of capital outflow. So he added a word. We will closely monitor the financial market in case of unforeseen circumstances and respond promptly when a crisis occurs. They say there is no problem with words, but in reality, it was more of a lip service to calm market unrest. Interest rates in Korea were already lower than those of the United States. However, the Fed rate hike has widened the gap by more than 1%. Experts predicted that the key interest rate, currently 1.5%, will be raised by at least 0.5% and at most 1% at the next MPC meeting. In 3 days, more than $300 billion of market capitalization around the world evaporated. The Korean economy could not be free from shock. Meanwhile, the stock market continued to rise, and as there was controversy over the peak, foreign capital began to flow out like an ebb. The index has already fallen close to 5%, and the exchange rate fluctuates. Fortunately, Korea's current account continues to be in surplus and has sufficient foreign exchange reserves. Even in a crisis situation, it has the stamina to endure to a certain extent. However, there are not a few countries that do not. Not only emerging countries but also developed countries in the Eurozone looked at this situation with serious eyes. As the exchange rate rose and import prices soared, fierce protests broke out in South America. Riots broke out in Venezuela, which is already in default, and movements to resign in Bolivia and Chile also took place. The rapid cooling of the Chinese economy and rumors that Argentina and Greece would declare defaults soon began to spread, adding to the uncertainty in the global financial market. Governments around the world have declared that they will do everything in their power to stabilize financial markets, and the European Central Bank governor said, the Fed should approach cautiously considering the impact of a key rate hike on the global economy. However, despite the chaos, Chairman McClay said that he would not give up on raising interest rates. A few days ago, global stock markets were up, and investors bought stocks in anticipation of a year-end rally. But in an instant the mood changed. When it goes up, endless rosy prospects come out. But when it goes down, all kinds of pessimistic prospects pour in. Suddenly, the optimism disappears and the pessimism takes its place. The question now is how far the Fed will raise interest rates. Although the opinions of experts differed, the general consensus was that it would be difficult more than 1 or 2 times in the future. President Ha Chong-min also held a meeting of related ministers and asked Deputy Prime Minister Jong Ki-soo to stabilize the financial market. Taekyu stuck his tongue out. It's not really a fuss. Raising interest rates would be such a big deal. Because there has been too much money in the market due to low interest rates. If we look at the causes, it ultimately leads to the global financial crisis. In order to prevent a recession, the US did not have enough interest rates to be lowered to zero, So it printed money and directly supplied it to the market through quantitative easing. If you lose that much money, it is normal for hyperinflation to occur. However, the dollar is the reserve currency. Dollars issued by the United States flowed all over the world. In other words, inflation is exported. And now that you're trying to get that money back, you're in trouble. Currently, the world is looking only at the United States. This was nothing short of a clear indication of the extent to which the United States has had an impact on the global economy. I said, muttering, "Why now? It's like they're deliberately trying to shock the market." Take, you asked. Then no. It's not going to happen, but some say that the Fed deliberately conducted a stress test to shock the market. But even so, this is too much. There is also the view that the US is trying to tame other countries by using the key rate hike as a weapon. It is said to be a paving stone for occupying an advantageous position in future trade negotiations. In any case, the rate hike has already happened. If you can't change reality, you have to react accordingly. I have one question. It's kind of strange that President Ronald is quiet. As far as I know Ronald, he's never going to stand still. The United States has been enjoying an unprecedented boom since the financial crisis, which has helped tremendously to boost approval ratings. That's why Ronald insisted that interest rates never rise until his re-election. However, unlike the strong reaction on Twitter whenever there was talk of an interest rate hike, this time it was quiet. The U.S. media speculated that the Fed may have had some communication with the administration beforehand. So, did Ronald know and condone? A few days later, I got a call from President Ronald. "How are you these days?" "I am doing well." "How is the president?" Ronald burst out laughing. "I'm always the same. It'll be Christmas in a little while." We talked every day. He asked about my marriage and he boasted about his son and daughter. But there seemed to be something he wanted to say other than that. Instead of asking, I listened to him and waited for him to speak. "You don't ask me anything." "What do you mean?" Ronald said in a bitter voice. "I'm talking about raising the base rate. It's not something I decided. Everyone is busy asking me. It's something everyone should be interested in. Even now, if you turn on the TV, news related to this problem will flow. It seems to swallow up all other international issues. What do you think about the rate hike?" "What would I know? Just tell me." "It's similar to what other people think. I think the raise is of course necessary, but it is difficult to understand why it was raised so much in December. He probably knows better than I do what chaos is going on in each country." That's right." In his voice and tone I felt something unknown. "Is there something wrong with you?" Silence ensued for a while. One question came back after a long wait. "Are you my friend?" I remember all the things I had done with him. He was the most unusual president in American history. He ascended to the presidency without holding a single public office, and pushed forward his policies even after he became president. Thanks to his character as a solitary general, he was able to save the United States from the crisis of Big One. Whether he is a good president or not is for Americans to decide. But there is no doubt that he is my friend. That's right. I think of the former president as a friend, and I hope the president thinks the same way. I couldn't see his face, but I could tell he was smiling. "Who are you with now?" "There is Take You next to me. If you are that friend, you can trust me. Shouldn't it be known to other people?" After a while he sighed. "As you may know, I have suffered from various scandals since becoming president. The press and enemies attacked me for everything I did and every word I said. This is because he does not belong to the mainstream of American politics. Before he became president, he didn't have a particularly good life. Women, gossip, tax evasion, illegal, etc. In a way, he lived faithfully to his desires. He probably didn't even know he would later become president. Fortunately, there is no such thing as fatal. Some of them are still unknown to anyone. But someone knows it and has proof. Read more at wuxiax.com. Yes. I was surprised by that. What kind of scandal? Is that important? Actually, the scandal doesn't really matter. An important thing is, what is the ripple effect? Ronald paused for a moment before answering. This is fatal. If it is known, re-election will be considered a failure. Perhaps. He blurted out his words. Is this something that could lead to impeachment? The answer came after a while. It could be worse than that. Is someone holding a card that could bring down the President of the United States? Who is that? I don't know, because I have never been directly threatened or asked for anything. But you can feel it with your skin. It's a situation where you can't trust anyone around you right now. I felt my throat dry up. What do you want from there? I don't even know. But it seems that there are a lot of people involved in the Ministry of Finance, and they seem to want me not to get involved in that matter. Not everyone in the government organization obeys the president's words in a straight line. Even people in the same organization have different views and represent the interests of the group to which they belong. Unlike Korea, where public and resignation are strictly separated, this is not the case in the United States. Many of the high-ranking officials of the Ministry of Finance are from Golden Gate or JP Morgan, and after retiring they receive a huge salary and move to IB or PF positions. After all, would it be possible to say that the financial capital of Wall Street is moving America? What the hell is going on? Maybe that's why he didn't say anything about the rate hike? I tried to stay calm, holding back the desire to scream. Did this interest rate hike happen regardless of the president's will? That's right. I only found out after seeing the announcement. It's probably because you believe in me just because I've told you up to this point. Even if this conversation was recorded and leaked, it would be fatal to him. It was probably difficult to tell anyone but me. Hey, if there is anything I can do to help, please let me know. Ronald said in a sincere voice. Thank you, my friend. When I finished the call and put the handset down, Take-You, who was listening next to me, asked quickly. What did you just say? Just by looking at my response to the phone call, you'd have noticed that it's usually nothing serious. I summarized what Ronald said and said it. Take-You opened his eyes like that and shouted. Who is threatening the President of the United States with his weaknesses? No, this is not some Hollywood movie. It's a story that seems like something out of a movie or a netplay drama, really. You can't tell anyone. Of course, no one will believe what I say. Ah, okay. As the CEO's office uses an entire floor, his voice doesn't leak out, but Take-You lowered his voice for nothing. What kind of scandal is this? I do not know. But it will never be known. At the time of Big One, he showed that he was not afraid of impeachment. It was because of the confidence that the impeachment would not pass easily. If so, this scandal should be seen as much more serious than that. If you think Ronald is getting in the way, why didn't you just tell him? Because not drawing a sword is the most dangerous. Currently, Ronald's approval rating is over 70%. He has nearly 90% approval in California alone. People want the people they like well and not the people they hate. If someone comes forward and tries to impeach Ronald, there will certainly be a strong headwind of public opinion. If you draw a sword, you will have to kill your opponent and you may get hurt in the process. They don't want their identities to be revealed. If you can get the results you want without seeing blood, there is no need to overdo it. Rather, it is better to have Ronald sit there and move as he pleases. If you can control the President of the United States by hiding, isn't it a non-profit that rules the entire world? What if we tell Russia to drop a nuclear bomb or go to war with China? That's impossible. The system of democracy is not so lax. If Ronald is going to do something outrageous, he's Congress and the press and won't sit still. If you obey orders like that, Ronald will also choose to be impeached. You will be satisfied with the degree of tying his hands and feet. I can't even believe it when I say it. It would sound more convincing if Ronald was paranoid or megalomaniac. Anyway, one thing is clear from this. What? There is something behind the rate hike. Taeyong said with a serious expression. Wait a minute. So, to summarize, what kind of power is in the U.S. administration and are they leading the rate hike? Right. I know. She had felt it vaguely before that, And the moment she heard Ronald's words, she realized it clearly. If my prediction is correct, there is no way to end it with just raising interest rates. No, this will be just the beginning. Then, Taeyong seemed to remember something. Maybe this. I nodded. Something else will happen. What the hell is going on now and what's going to happen in the future? I said, suppressing my anxiety. I want to find out more. It is illegal to trade using undisclosed information in the financial world. However, even if prohibited by law, it is not uncommon. Information is bound to leak out somewhere. And if you've been exposed to the information in any way, it's odd that you don't trade and sit still. How many people would put their hands on it if they knew that their assets would plummet tomorrow? Had he known that the US benchmark interest rate would rise by 0.75%, he must have done something in advance. Following my instructions, Sang Yeep Sr. analyzed the stock market, and team leader Seo Sang-won and Yuri and other team members thoroughly analyzed the transactions in the foreign exchange and bond markets. Everyone was busy with their work and delayed leaving work. Seo Sang-won, the team leader, was the first to report. European funds have been withdrawn from emerging market bond and stock markets 6 months ago. It seems that the market continued to sell so that it did not notice. Top-selling banks include HSBC, Barclays, Royal Bank of Scotland and Standard Chartered. It seems that other funds also moved, but it is difficult to understand. It is not easy to find out who the owner of the money is, as the money doesn't even have a name tag on it. It seems that European funds moved first, then American funds. That's right. As expected. Where did those money really go? And this is what I learned during the course of the investigation. Albert Management sold all its assets, including stocks and bonds, last month. Is that the Vulture Fund? Yes. Albert Management, founded by Carl Albert Singer, is one of the most aggressively investing activist hedge funds in recent years. As it is a privately held company, it is not known where the funds were invested. I laughed to myself. I was told it was growing rapidly. I gathered the team leaders and held a meeting. As you know, the market situation is dire. Instruct them to carefully examine the financial position of our subsidiaries, to arrange them in advance if there are any uncertainties, and to convert all the cash they have into dollars so that they are not known to the market. Keris, Facit, OTK Games, etc. are also providing services in emerging countries, and the profits there naturally come in the currency of that country. The exchange rate has already gone up too much. If you exchange money now, your losses will be quite large. It could be higher in the future. Everyone's expression turned serious at my words. Selling emerging country currencies and buying dollars meant that the crisis would grow rather than subside. Senior Sanjiop asked cautiously. Are you guessing anything? I'll tell you when I'm a little more certain. Okay. The next event happened sooner than expected. It was Brexit. The Brexit vote ended more than 3 years ago. However, negotiations are still ongoing over the UK's exit from the EU. The British House of Commons once again rejected the Brexit deal and asked the EU for a new deal with an extension of the deadline for the end of the negotiations. As it had already happened several times, it was nothing new. The European Commission, however, rejected it and criticized the UK. The EU has already waited long enough. Britain should be held accountable for what they did. Any further negotiations are pointless. The EU had good reasons for taking such a hardline stance. One thing is bound to be related to another. The interest rate hike in the United States hit a direct blow to Southern Europe, which is already suffering from a fiscal crisis. Greece is already receiving bailouts and is implementing austerity measures at EU demand. However, when there was talk of further austerity, public sentiment exploded. A coalition of radical leftists led by Greek Prime Minister Andreas Simitis has launched a referendum on EU withdrawal, similar to the UK. Only great powers like Germany and France benefit from the current EU system, and many are groaning in debt. This was a fundamental problem with a single currency. In the past, the value of the German mark, which has a high national credibility and a current account surplus, would rise, and the Greek drachma, suffering from crisis, would have fallen in value. However, since they are tied with the same euro, Germany's currency was undervalued despite good exports, and Greece's currency was overvalued despite the financial crisis. In other words, the single currency of the euro is advantageous to Germany and unfavorable to Greece. Because of this, Greece has long argued that in order to escape the financial crisis, they should abandon the use of the euro and return to the drachma. Greece has previously voted for or against EU austerity measures, but this is the first time it has asked to leave the EU. If the vote is high, Brexit will be followed by Brexit. The question is whether Greece can handle the shock of leaving the EU. As in the UK, it is enough to hold on until the desired outcome of the negotiations is reached. I will not make bad negotiations. If this situation is left unattended, there is no law preventing Spain, Portugal, and Italy, who are experiencing similar difficulties, from appearing similarly. From the EU's point of view, it is necessary to take a hard line with the UK in order to strengthen internal solidarity. The EU has issued an ultimatum to Britain. The UK has only two options: either accept the deal and leave the EU, or leave the EU without negotiation. With the shock of interest rate hike, Brexit, and the EU crisis overlapping, the financial market looked like it had been hit by a bomb. The already shaky stock market crashed again when a no-deal Brexit showed signs of becoming a reality. Crash theorists who appeared on TV raised their voices that this is only the beginning. The financial crisis will start next year. Again, the person who received the most spotlight was Professor Nouriel Roubini of New York University. He poured out a gloomy prospect as he was nicknamed Dr. Tomb. The global economy has 9 problems. Now only 2 of them have occurred. The economic slowdown continues and the risks are growing. Central banks around the world have almost exhausted the means to stimulate the economy. The most serious problem is the decoupling of the financial market and the real economy, and the US economy and the global economy. After she left work after 10 o'clock, Ellie lay down on her bed without taking off her coat. I am always late for work these days. You know what the situation is now. Feels like hell when I go to work. It's frightening how much I lose every day. If Golden Gate is like this, the situation for other financial companies will be even worse. After working hard for a year, it was like a flood just before harvest. Hey, I want to quit the company. Are you really going to quit? Will Jinhoo feed me? Of course. Ellie opened her arms and embraced me. I do not like it. I'll feed you after, Jean. Holding it like this, all my worries seemed to disappear. What do you think of this situation, Jinhoo? I laughed bitterly. Everyone is curious about my thoughts these days. What the market hates the most is uncertainty. In a situation of increasing anxiety like now, people want to know the future at any cost. That's why I've been getting a lot of interview inquiries these days. Reporters from inside and outside the company camped out in front of the company and randomly grabbed employees and asked about my thoughts and OTK company's countermeasures. I told Ellie, I'm going to America for a few days. What's going on? I want to get some advice from you. Edens, Georgia, USA. In a quiet small town stood a small 5-story building. It is a building that can be seen everywhere, and it is not hung on a large sign, so anyone passing by car will pass by without knowing which company is in this building. Surprisingly, this is the headquarters of Berkshire Cashier, the largest investment firm in the United States and currently the 6th largest by market capitalization in the United States. President Warren Buffett, the world's best investor and one of the world's top 5 richest investors, walked out the front door to welcome me. Welcome to Berkshire Cashier. I said politely. Long time no see, Chairman. Let me introduce you to the staff. As I entered, the staff greeted me with applause. I greeted them one by one. Despite being a huge company worth over $500 billion, Berkshire Cashier had only 60 employees. Compared to the thousands or tens of thousands of people working in investment banks, it is a very small number. However, it is no exaggeration to say that each of them is the world's best financial elite. But I made a lot more money. That's why everyone is looking at me with respect like this. Are you hungry after coming a long way? Let's go eat first. Warren Buffett said, showing his car. This is a brand new car. How is it? I raised my thumb. It's a nice car. It looks like you made a good purchase. His new car is none other than a Carlos AD3. I got in the car driven by Warren Buffett and headed to the pancake shop near my office. Neither the regular owner nor the guests were surprised to see the Warren Buffett. I was surprised to see my face. We had a light lunch there. I forgot to leave $5 million behind. Yes. Isn't it at least $5 million to have lunch with President Warren Buffett? He laughed at my joke. Haha. We also accept credit cards, so you don't have to worry. After we finished eating, we grabbed coffee and walked down the trail behind the company. The temperature was low, but the sunlight was strong, so it did not feel that cold. It's nice here, Warren Buffett said proudly. Of course. Living is better than anywhere else in the world. That's why I don't leave here. Unlike other people who, if successful, leave for the big city, he has always lived in his hometown where he was born and raised. It is no exaggeration to say that Eden's became world famous thanks to Warren Buffett. Shareholders meeting in May attracts shareholders from around the world with Berkshire Cashier stock to flock to this quiet town. At that time, the whole city is enveloped in a festive atmosphere. A long time ago, my dream was to participate in the Berkshire Cashier General Meeting. He was taken aback by my words. Is that true? Yes. I was thinking of saving up the money to buy B shares. A shares are too expensive. Then I will invite you to the next general meeting of shareholders. Please come. I will come running whenever the president calls. It's rare to get a chance to talk to the best investors in the world. Ha ha ha. Warren Buffett burst out laughing at my words. Looking at his smiling face, there is no other grandfather next to him. You are the best investor in the world. Haven't you been pushed by CEO Kong Jin-Hu? I smiled bitterly. I was just lucky. If it wasn't for the visible future, even his toes would not have followed. Yeji led me, who was an ordinary young man, all the way here. CEO Kong Jin-Hu made impossible things a reality. He should be proud of what he has accomplished so far. Warren Buffett has been consistently profitable for over 60 years, but my investment experience is less than 10 years old. Even if you win today, the market doesn't know what will happen tomorrow. A gambler's ability is not determined at the moment he wins the most. At the end, it is determined by how much is left in your hand when you get up from the board. When an investor leaves the market entirely, he will be well appreciated for his achievements. We stopped and sat in the Mercedes-Benz. As anyone who has worked in stocks knows, investors are under tremendous stress every day. They cannot eat properly and live with a stomach ailment. Of course, the lifespan is short. But even though he was over 90 years old, he still had a straight face. If you think about it, this is a bigger deal than making a lot of money. It means that he thoroughly took care of himself. I asked over coffee, Chairman, do you think a financial crisis will happen? Although it was a sudden question, he answered comfortably. It's a lot of talk these days. In the capitalist system, the economy repeats booms and depressions, and in the process, financial crises occur periodically. When do you think it will happen? I do not know. Coping with a financial crisis is similar to Indians having a rainy day. It's a famous myth. When Indians celebrate rain, it always rains. Because he has a rain festival until it rains. Those who advocate the financial crisis are similar. Even Professor Nouriel Roubini has been saying for 5 years that a financial crisis will occur every year. Not long ago, a New York Times article diagnosed that the likelihood of a financial crisis next year is significantly higher than that of last year, and this year. Just as it will rain someday even if there is a drought, a crisis will occur someday even if the boom continues. The question is, when is that? A forecast that is not on time is meaningless. I changed the question. Is it possible for someone to cause a financial crisis? Warren Boat's eyes widened. You've probably noticed that I know something and feel a sense of crisis. But instead of asking about it, he answered calmly. As you know, the world does not run on conspiracies and conspiracies alone. I see. He was silent for a moment, then added his words. But it is true that huge forces are weighing down finance. When you think about it, it's not surprising. Everyone wants the market to move in the direction they want it to go. When you buy a stock, you want it to rise, and when you sell it, you want it to fall. Some want a rise, some want a fall, and some want a collapse. It is not uncommon in the financial world for like-minded people to form a force and move systematically. Warren Boat said he knew what I was thinking. You can't create something that nobody else has. People are not stupid. I see. You cannot deceive everyone with lies and deceit. You can shake the market for a moment, but you cannot change the direction of the market. But it is possible to make things happen. There is a saying. It is not a glass of water that overflows a glass, but a drop of water. I pondered over those words. A drop of water means nothing unless the glass is full. But if your glass is full of water, even a single drop of water can make a difference. If there had been no gunfire in Sarajevo, would World War I have happened? If Hitler had not been born, would World War II have happened? They were just a drop of water. If Europe had been at peace, the assassination of Crown Prince Franz Ferdinand would have ended with only those involved punished, and Hitler would have lived and died as an obscure painter. Then is it full of water now? Warren Boat grinned bitterly. I do not know. Both the glass and the water are transparent and invisible to the naked eye. No one knows how big a glass is or how full it is. It's only when the water overflows that everyone realizes. But it is true that the game has reached its peak. You probably know it intuitively as you have been investing for a long time. Unlike others who are aggressively investing, Warren Boat has recently hoarded cash. Berkshire Cashier's cash holdings hit an all-time high of $150 billion. The price is like a dog for a walk. Sometimes it runs ahead, sometimes it lags behind, but in the end it comes back to its owner. Famous saying. Disparities between price and value in the market are very common. Rather, it can be said that coincidences are rare. If price outstrips value, that's a bubble. And the bubble will burst someday. The time to buy good companies cheap is over. Now even bad companies are selling at a high price. Even if it doesn't make a profit, if you just show an idea, investors come to you with money. How many of them are really good companies? I have had success that way. However, it was because he saw foreknowledge, and even after that he supported it with a huge amount of capital. If it had not been possible to increase investment through Brexit, the current Keras would not exist. Many of the startups that have received similar investments either fail or are still not making a profit. They are simply selling bonds and stocks to investors to make a living. If a crisis comes, many companies will collapse. It is natural for an insolvent company to collapse. However, the financial crisis shakes even healthy companies. For some, it will be an opportunity to buy a good company at a low price. Warren Boat is famous for making huge amounts of money after the financial crisis. At that time, there was no end to the recession, and there were even rumors that the global financial system would collapse. When everyone was screaming in horror, Warren Boat invested all he had to buy the property. Now that everyone knows the outcome, they regret the things they didn't buy then. But if that ever happened again, how many people would throw it all away? There is nothing to worry too much about. After capitalism was born, it went through numerous crises, but it has always overcome crises and has grown again. It was the same last time, and it will be the next. I see. When he finished talking, he asked me, "Did my talk help you?" I nodded. Yes. It has been very helpful. I headed to Wall Street to visit the Golden Gate headquarters. The most important thing in the market is information. It is also possible to turn stones into gold with information. The higher you are, the faster you can access accurate information. If you look at the Korean stock market alone, foreigners move first, followed by institutions. And individuals always take the last train. Financial capital has long been connected in a complex network, forming a huge cartel. Golden Gate, JP Morgan, BOA, Wells Fargo, Citi, Capital One, Redstone, Care, Lone Star, Starwood Capital, etc. Who is at the apex? I can be said to be a heretic born outside the cartel. This was possible because foreknowledge was the first to come in contact with information that no one knew about. Wall Street still looked like a row of gray buildings. It is said that Manhattan was bought by the Dutch at the beginning of the 17th century for $24 to Indians. It is the place where the most money flows compared to the area and population. As I was checking in at the hotel, someone came up to me. Long time no see. Neither tall nor short, long blonde hair that falls to the waist, small face, pure white skin, shiny forehead, big eyes and a tall nose, eyes shining like jewels. It seemed to tell what a perfect look was like. It's so unrealistic, it's like living in a different world all alone. I remembered her name. Grace Rothschild. He smiled and asked me, "Do you have time for a cup of tea?" She guided me to an old-fashioned tea house. Presumably there was no one else but us. "Did you come all the way here to see me?" At my words she shook her head. "Please. I've been here for a week or so. I heard that your private plane was coming, so that's why I came here." Was he on Wall Street before the U.S. interest rate hike? Grace removed her gloves from her hands, and in her graceful motions lifted the teacup. Read more at wuxiax.com. The teacup is a bone china with gold rims in a colorful pattern. Tea and ceramics were also imported from China, but at some point they became the culture of the British aristocrats. Whoever goes to Wall Street is one of two people. Are you here to make an investment or to receive an investment? Which one are you? Which one does it look like? She drank her tea and said jokingly, "Tell me if you need money. Will the Rothschild Bank give me a loan?" "If you wish." I leaned back. "How long can I borrow?" "It depends on the person. Wouldn't unlimited loans be possible for you?" "Not the other person's credit, but as long as the bank's lending capacity is enough. If the person does not pay the money on time, the bank is bankrupt. Of course, such a loan is not possible." "Is that possible?" "There was only one. Who the Rothschild banks allowed unlimited loans. Someone." She spoke in a low voice as if telling a secret that should never be leaked. "I am the Count of Monte Cristo." Haha. Laughter came out of its own accord. In the novel, the Count of Monte Cristo deals indefinitely with several banks. One of them is Rothschild. Among them was the historic Banks Bank, which went bankrupt in 1995 by Nick Leeson. There are countless conspiracy theories surrounding the Rothschilds. The novels and movies in which they appear are also important. The important fact is that they exist in reality. If you think about it, it's funny. Even today, families that are mentioned as the wealthiest in 19th century novels dominate the world's finances. Korea is called the Seossong Republic. The power of the Seossong group extends in all directions, whether in politics, business, legal circles, academia, or the media, and they serve the interests of the group without knowing it or not. Those who were chaebols for only a few decades are controlling Korean society. So what about the Rothschilds? For over 250 years, they have reigned as the world's top financial families. I can't even imagine how many assets there are in the world, how many followers there are, and how powerful they are. Would that be enough to move the world's capital?